everyone. Welcome to another episode of this podcast. I'm here with Ryubix, as always.
Hello, everyone.
And we actually have a special guest this time, unlike last time. It's FB7 from the UAE.
Hello. Hello.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
I'm not doing too bad myself.
Wow, that's a very powerful introduction right there.
So, we are going to be talking about a few different topics today, as we always do. We are going to start off with
The African Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023 as our first topic.
Woo! Big times.
Yeah, big times indeed. Following that, we will have also a little debate about the AFC Asian Cup 2023 as well, both tournaments taking place last January, followed by the CONCACAF Nations League Finals, and to finish, the Euro Qualifiers. I think I swapped the last two, but it's okay. We will talk about everything today. So, for our first topic of the night, as I said, we'll start with Africa with the AFCON. So, does any one of you have something to say in particular, or shall we start with the groups?
the AFCON. The group stage was pretty insane. There were a couple teams that we didn't expect to make it to the knockouts. But once it got to the knockouts, it kind of normalized.
Yeah. The AFCON was like a very left and right tournament. It's like it was unpredictable, and there's like many weird results as we go along.
Yeah, that's also a feeling I share with you. There were a lot of unexpected scenarios and results, which led to, as Sam said, very chaotic group stage. We can see that with Group A, where the host, Ivory Coast, despite winning the opening game of the tournament, they qualified by only a short advance in the third-ranked qualification. So it was quite a first big
It was
upset.
1 point. It was 1 point they missed. They wouldn't have made it. So if anyone scored a goal like any other group, they wouldn't have made it through.
Oh, you mean for the goal average, right?
Yeah, the third place rankings.
Yeah.
Let me check that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Like Ghana and Zambia, one more point as they were through ahead of the host. That would have been very, very sad, especially when you know what happened.
Well, through via goal differential.
Yes, thanks to goal differential, they were through. But when you think about it, they have done like Portugal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because being
But
third, that's when
Portugal, I think.
Yes.
Portugal, I think they drew all 3 games, but Ivory Coast here they lost 2 games, and they weren't as much losing as compared to Portugal.
Yeah, you're right, but both teams qualified with only 3 points in 3 games, so it's like they tied 3 times, you know. And despite being close to elimination, they still managed to win the whole thing, since after all it was just win or get out.
Spoiler alert, they win the whole thing.
Yeah, I think most of the people that will watch this episode already know about that, so...
That was the joke.
Do you want to talk about Group B, which was also very interesting in itself?
The fact that Cape Verde actually won the group and Ghana got knocked out.
Yes, that is one of the things, yes.
There was a moment where the Mozambique against Ghana game, Mozambique were down 2-0. The Mozambique scored a penalty, and at the end, the Mozambique keeper, the ball was going out for a goal kick, and the Mozambique keeper just touched it, and it went out for a corner, and Mozambique just scored to make it 2-2.
Yeah, that end was insane, and the worst part is that in those very few additional time, Ghana was from qualified to eliminated of the World Tournament. That must have been a nightmare for the supporters.
That final goal of the game was the only goal that was not a penalty kick.
You're right, actually. Yes, 3 penalties and only one fair goal. That is something to strive. But
That sounds like something that happens all the time in Africa, though. It's usually the teams that make it through are the ones that get the penalties, whether they're legit or not.
no wonder there is a lot of talks about corruption on the continent.
So talks about corruption in every continent.
Yeah, but it seems Africa have are one level up considered on that matter, based on on allegations of corruption. I feel like you see them more talking about it. But what
And
I like to see is Egypt drawing all 3 games 2-2 and qualifying to the next stage.
well, here's something else for you too. Mohamed Salah only had one goal, and it was a penalty in the first game. He did not score any of the other
Yeah.
goals, and he did not score.
He
a
only played
non-penalty.
one.
Oh,
He
the
only
one
played
game.
one game as well. He was injured for the rest of the tournament, I think.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, he was very unlucky in that tournament, which is a shame for such a world-class player. But yeah, but without him, Egypt was very not bad per se, but not a very strong team, to be fair. So yeah, that tournament was a failure for Egypt, especially when they
Oh,
were among the favorites to win, I think.
oh, for sure. But this also enforces how good Cape Verde is now, as far as within Africa.
Yeah, Africa is improving by the day, and Cape Verde is one prime example that even the small nations are now capable of doing great things.
Wasn't Cape Verde the smallest nation
Indeed.
by population in the tournament?
In the specific years,
They
I do believe, but not in the history of the AFCON. That will be Comoros.
Right. I wasn't talking about in the history of Africa, just this particular AFCON.
About Group C, I think there is. I don't think there is a lot to say about that group, especially that outside of
I mean,
Senegal dominating.
yeah, Senegal. They were the best. I think they were the best team coming into the knockout stage of the tournament. They literally scored. They scored 2+ goals in every game, and I was thinking after the group stage, I was like, definitely, I think Senegal's gonna take this trophy again, but instead they were eliminated kind of early.
I was thinking the same thing as you, because I do believe they were the only side to finish the group stage with 9 points. Let me check. Yes, it was the case. And with such a good reward, like you, I share the idea that Senegal was ahead of everyone else and will go for that trophy, but still couldn't get it in the end. Very, very, very sad for them. I expected them to be way better in that tournament.
Um, I will say what shocked me was Gambia not getting any points at all, especially when they made it to the knockouts in the last rendition of this tournament.
To be fair, Gambia was a newcomer and it was like a one-time wonder surprise along with Madagascar, if you recall correctly.
Yeah,
Right.
that group was a group of death, I believe, in Africa, the Group C of AFCON.
Yes, that was a group of death. But still,
But
the
still,
overall
just
ranking
a team that
is
had made,
logical.
but yeah, but still, just a team that had made the knockouts in in this rendition before this one gets knocked out in fourth place with no points at all. Like I was expecting maybe 1 or 2 points, but not zero. They did give it to Cameroon though. Cameroon really had to. They had to score in stoppage time to win that game.
Yes,
Indeed.
I think that even without that, they would have qualified anyway over Ivory Coast.
Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting Gambia to qualify. I was just saying it was odd that they didn't get any points at all.
But as I was saying, I think it was a one-time wonder last time. But a real loss in the group stage would be Algeria being last in a group where they were the favorites.
Yeah, they were knocked out last year, last time in AFCON as well in the group stage, and I was thinking like not they won't let do it again, but instead they slipped up again, and even worse of all, they lost to Mauritania, which is like a bit less weaker African side, but like I found that the most shocking result of the group stage.
Mauritania was definitely the weakest side of this group, and they still were able to make it past Algeria. That's crazy.
No, yeah, you can't even imagine the shock to see Algeria going out in the group stage again, because I think that's the second time in a row it happened for them. And that's very a dark
Indeed.
era for such a country. Anyways, moving on to Group E. Oh, a very more interesting group. Maybe the second hardest group after Group C. And
It's shocking that a World Cup team, a 2022 World Cup team, failed to qualify.
yeah, that's another big shock as
Yeah,
well.
again,
But
again sorry, again Tunisia they I mean like last AFCON they weren't like a strong team, and again here their inconsistency came into them and they finished bottom. Namibia was a team we were all surprised to see go through, but they managed to overcome and they came with one win and one draw.
Namibia was quite a big surprise, but I think the problem of that group is that most teams played more or less defensive, because as you can see there was not a lot of goals, and for the few I remember of those games, the teams were more about possession and domination. That's really about scoring a lot of goals and going very forward if you put out Africa versus Namibia. And on that game, Tunisia was clearly not prepared. And that's why the early elimination of the country. What do you think, Sam?
I agree.
Okay, so you have nothing to add. So let's move on to Group F. And it is quite similar to Group B, where another country advancing without a single win.
Yep.
Indeed, I think they played each other in the round of 16 as well. DR Congo and Egypt. They actually faced off against each other, and it went to penalties. So it was a team so I think it was Egypt that went with 0 wins, 4 draws, and 0 losses.
You are actually right. You are actually right. Egypt and Congo faced off each other in the round of 16, and it ended in a tie. That was something. Very, how can I say that? A bit stupid. Wait, wait, I have clicked on a link without noticing. So we already reached the knockout stage, and there was not many surprises in the round of 16. Like maybe, yes, there was South Africa knocking out Morocco. That was quite a little shock, if you ask me. But also Ivory Coast knocking out Senegal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Was just with how bad the Ivory Coast did Cote d'Ivoire, as it is, did in the group stages. It was amazing to see them beat Senegal, who looked really, really strong.
Yeah, no, that was a shock. But that was also the moment Ivory Coast totally changed face, and the polemics started for the country, because, well, first they kicked off their coach, uh, Grasset, after the group stage, which was, to be fair, very poor for such a country, especially as host. And starting that moment, the team was better, but there was a lot of very suspicious goals and everything. And there was a lot of people saying the tournament is probably going to get rigged, so Ivory Coast wins it on home soil. And I don't think it's true, but I do agree that such a change of Earth is very, very weird, if you ask me.
I saw in the round of 16 there was a lot of underdog matches as well. I mean, like good matches as well, like Nigeria against Cameroon. It's a big derby, that one, and also the two Guineas facing each other at the end. You can see Equatorial Guinea against Guinea.
I see.
Not quite the Guinea Derby because Guinea-Bissau wasn't playing, but
Still a common name thing.
Okay. So for the quarterfinals, what we got? We got Nigeria knocking out Angola, was not a shock. South Africa still needed the penalties to knock out Cape Verde. Ivory Coast continuing their impressive run and knocking out the rising Mali. And Congo getting their first win in the tournament in the quarterfinals against Guinea. Like that was very special. Like when you think about it, in the quarterfinals, there was always one previous winner versus one club. One country that never won the title at all. So every matchup was very special. And
And every previous winner won.
yes, and every previous winner won, guaranteeing a previous winner to get the trophy again. So everything was very insane in that tournament.
I would like to mention that
And
it took the Ivory Coast into extra time to be able to beat Mali.
Oh yes, you are right. It was not even a win in normal time.
I also want to add, like, about the teams, there was not a single one from the World Cup that was also in the quarterfinals, and also every team that made the quarterfinals in the previous year got replaced by a different team.
Yes, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. That's actually very interesting statistics, showing that maybe Africa is on the good. Is on the good side. They are improving a lot, and the whole continent is getting better and more competitive. Too bad it's still underrated a lot because while not the most skilled competition, I still do believe it's most competitive. Like it's for the teams involved, it's one of the most difficult tournaments to win in the world. If you know what I mean.
It's a very, it's a very competitive tournament.
Yeah, very diversified. And when you look at the final four, you can say, well, I'm quite right. I mean, Nigeria have to win on penalties. Ivory Coast barely win by one goal, and even the third place and the final was very, very battled, a very heated battle. So
Congrats to South Africa getting third place, by the way.
yes, we do need to congratulate them, especially when in the last 20 years they barely have any decent results or excellent results in that competition. Being a country that have a lot of years are a lot of years late in development, partly due to apartheid. Because yes, that was the reason that this country arrived late in football. I just wanted to mention that one because I just thought about it. But basically, Ivory Coast got their third title, I think. I think it's their third title in Africa.
It was their third title. I just checked, yeah.
So yes, it was their third title. So yeah, Ivory Coast getting themselves quite a very lookable trophy cabinet, if you know what I mean. So congratulations on Ivory Coast for winning the AFCON at home. You deserved it, and it will be a story people will remember for generations to come. Now that we have finished with Africa, let's move on to the AFC Asian Cup Qatar 2023. Smooth, if you please may explain to us about the tournament.
Okay, so it was in Qatar this time. There was a big. It was China who was going to host the tournament, but because of COVID, they decided to give it to Qatar. So it was like a World Cup Part 2. And Qatar, they were looking to get their redemption because if you remember in the World Cup, they weren't good, we'd say. And You can see here in Group A, Qatar, Tajikistan, China, and Lebanon. Tajikistan, they shocked the scene a bit. They managed to beat Lebanon at the end, and they got good results. And Qatar topped the group, winning all 3 games.
Yeah, I do remember that Tajikistan was newcomers in this tournament, the first tournament ever for them. I am right. Anyone?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tajikistan were newcomers in this tournament, and they weren't as they were expected to like maybe do good, but we'll get to their performance later because they did better than expected.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, and we can also talk about China. That was supposed to become a footballing country, and still they failed miserably to get out of the group stage.
They've been underperforming for the last several years, though, in international play.
Yeah, but that tournament I think was the last straw because China have really must change something absolutely if they want to become decent in the upcoming years, because otherwise I feel the 2050 objective will not be satisfied.
Oh, especially if they lose to Hong Kong again.
Oh, you're right about that. We are moving to Group B with Australia, Uzbekistan, Syria, and India. So what can we say about that group?
So Australia, this was a expected group, I'd say, but India still failed, but it was it was Australia and Uzbekistan, then it would be close between Syria and India. I mean, it was a very close game between them two, but there's not much to say about this group because it pretty much went straight to expectations, except that India was a bit disappointing.
Okay, so even for their current level of play, you think they are disappointing. Okay, I see that. Yeah, I mean, especially when you think back about what they've managed to do in 2019, where they were close to qualify, if I recall correctly. So yeah, that's a big downgrade. You're right. Still, Syria advancing was very nice touch, especially for a country that is still partly a victim of civil war. And Australia Uzbekistan topping the group was no surprise and expected for these developed countries in the Asian football scene.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Like, I expected Syria to do as good as they did. I thought it would be a little closer between Uzbekistan and Australia, especially since they drew as far as points were concerned. But I was at least hoping for India to score 1 goal.
Yeah, I was hoping too. It's very sad that they haven't been able to score once, even against Syria. But we have
But I do think Syria is on the rise. They're not quite ready for the big boys yet, but they're starting to improve again.
I'm not sure Syria is able to match what they have done for the 2018 qualifiers, to be fair. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they are on the rise, as you said. What I'm looking forward is India, because since ESL is developing and allowing more clubs to join the league, I expect more exposure of the sport in the country, and also to develop young talents for Indian football. So I'm still hoping for India to become at least an average decent side for Asian standards in the upcoming 50 to 20 years to come.
Indeed.
Oh, we have reached a group that might be interesting for you, FB. Group C.
Well, it was a bit of Iran dominance. UAE, they didn't play to expectations, but I mean, like the results, they were respectable. But Palestine, of course, they were in a big war right now, and I mean, for a team that's at war right now, they performed very good in the group stage. They even beat Hong Kong 3-0.
And how do you feel about the UAE scoring the goal for Palestine?
I mean, to be honest, we were down to 10 men, so it's just like hoping the whole game that we didn't concede another goal.
Well, I think you did the job mostly overall was to just get out of the group stage, being first or second, to avoid the biggest contention possible. So, yeah, I think your country did the job overall, because the group stage is basically just a pre-show tournament.
Yeah, I think the biggest shock was just Palestine and the UAE being even on points after the group stage.
You are quite right that Palestine overperformed compared to what we are used to see from the selection. So it was a very good period for the country to forget about problems, because when the national team performed during very hard times, it helps the population to feel better. Like when Japan won the World Cup in 2011 in women, that happened 1 month after the famous disaster. I read newspapers saying that this event helped a lot the Japanese population to overcome the trauma.
Same thing came for Iraq 2007 when they won the Asian Cup. And we're about to talk about Iraq right now.
Yes, I mean, yes, you will still have to talk about Iraq because we are in Group B.
I also have to talk about Japan.
And Japan as well.
Did I say Vietnam was going to make it out of this group, or was that when we were talking about World Cup qualifiers?
Wasn't are you referring to this last or second to last video where we disagree on which team will get out?
Because I was wrong. I'm pretty sure. I said Vietnam would make it, but I think that was qualifiers that I was talking about.
I mean, someone
Maybe.
check, but you might be right because
Because I remember Vietnam and Iraq were in the same group, and I think they're in the same group in the World Cup qualifiers.
Indonesia, Iraq, and Vietnam are in the same group in the Asian Cup and World Cup qualifiers.
Okay. So yeah, I think I was talking about the World Cup qualifiers.
Indeed.
they're in the same group. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I was about to talk about Group D. Iraq, they were pretty much like the best team in the whole group stage, in my opinion. They beat Japan, who was like, I think Japan before the tournament, they were just destroying everyone 5-0, 8-0, 10-0. They destroyed Germany and Jordan and everyone, basically. But Iraq, they basically, Ayman Hussein is an amazing player, and they just started to become on fire after they also won the Gulf Cup last year.
They won the Gulf Cup? Oh, yes, I remember about it. You're right. But I do agree, Iraq was the biggest upset. One of the biggest upsets in the group stage. I mean, beating Japan, we are runners up and the best team in the last World Cup from Asia. That's something you can brag about, to be fair. So yeah. So that was the moment I was like, Iraq might be reaching for the title, you know. And of course, Indonesia beating Vietnam, so I'm better than some mathematicians, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, Indonesia, they've been improving for a long time. I think in the lead up, like the last few years, they were seen as like a smaller team in Asia, but this time, however, they like made the round 16, so it's like a very huge improvement in terms of their football.
Vietnam's been on the rise though too, so it's been interesting to watch both of them being, especially when they're really close as far as geographically compared to the rest of Asia. How how much of a rivalry that's become.
Indeed.
I think it's time to move on to Group E.
Yes, I was about to say that. Who wants to talk?
I'll talk again, I guess. So, I mean, South Korea, they was like they were all right, but they weren't like special in that tournament because they had a bit of random results, or they were a bit like dragged away. They just had the quality, but they didn't have like the tactics or anything or much in the tournament. Like And also, Bahrain somehow topped this group out of nowhere. They beat Malaysia and they also beat Jordan, who fielded a less strong side. And the funny thing about this is because the winner of this group had to play against Japan in the round of 16. So literally every team didn't want to play against Japan.
Except Japan didn't even get first in their group.
I love irony. And that's what happened anyways, so it's still a funny thing to watch. And a Group F, which might be one of the most boring in this tournament, but still an upset in that group with Oman.
Yeah, Oman, they was very disappointing in that group. Thailand, they kept 3 clean sheets, which is impressive from them. And yeah, Oman were disappointing. And Kojo, Joel Kojo from Kyrgyzstan is now an Indonesian hero.
Seriously?
Yeah, because he scored a goal which made Indonesia advance.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. You're right. Okay. So basically, without that goal, Oman was getting through. That's very interesting, actually. Thanks for noticing that. We learn every day.
Indeed.
So basically, yeah, China and Oman are the two getting out, and we go to the bracket. Yeah, that must be a tough one to talk for you.
I mean, it was reflective of our performances. We went out, and Tajikistan, the underdog, went through in a shock.
That was a shocking win, continuing their very impressive first-time international performance. So it was the tournament for them, like an Iceland, if you ask me.
Indeed.
Then Iraq Wait, no, they lost to Jordan actually.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, Iraq, they were winning 2-1, and then Ayman Hussein, he did a celebration about eating a Jordanian food, and apparently it took a long time, so he was given a red card, and then Jordan scored twice in additional time. It was literally a very crazy game for the Asian Cup.
oh my god, I'm actually seeing that. Oh, the pain. Iraq
You
must
have
be in pain
5th
for
and
that.
7th minutes in stoppage time.
Ah, that must be painful. Then you have Australia knocking on Indonesia 4-0, so I think there is not much to say except that Australia was clearly dominating that game. Oh, Saudi versus Korea. Okay, I remember that was the game to watch in the round of 16. And
I don't
Korea
know
I
about
mean,
that.
South Korea, they scored in the 90 plus 9 minute in that game, and they ended up winning on penalties, so it was a very crazy game at that time.
I remember I was keeping track of this particular game when I was at work. I actually work with someone who's from South Korea, so I was giving him results as they were coming in.
That's a nice touch, to be fair. That's a nice touch to do. Then Iran advancing on penalties over Syria, so despite dominating their groups, they struggled to get past the first round of knockouts. Japan was able to come back and knock out the surprising Bahrain. Qatar, the host, and tighter order knockouts Palestine with difficulty. Uzbekistan still knocks out Thailand, and we are for the quarterfinals. Can we say there are any upset in the quarterfinals, or it's all normal for you?
I would say the South
I
Korea
mean,
beating Australia just because of South Korea's performance in the group stage.
Or just on the group stage performance, you
I
mean?
mean,
Yes?
Go ahead.
FB?
okay, I'll continue ahead. Iran beating Japan, I found that very surprising because Iran, I don't think they've beaten like a big team in Asia in a long time, and they were able to get a last minute penalty and they scored to advance. So it was a very amazing times for them, especially that they're also a struggling nation as of late.
Oh yes, yes, they have one of the best forwards in the whole continent. So I mean, overall, they have the best strikers, I think, in the whole continent. So it makes sense for them. But for me, in the recent years, they have been one of the most dangerous teams to face as a defender in qualifiers, for what I have been able to see. Um, while Japan lacks very efficient strikers. I still was happy to see Qatar continuing to improve their game and making another great Asian Cup
I
tournament.
was sad to see. I was sad to see Uzbekistan lose.
No, yes, you're right. I like Uzbekistan, their team, but to be fair, in recent years, I have more enjoyed Qatar because I know a lot of people hate them for a lot of reasons. But personally, I see the positives of seeing such a small country investing and creating an academy on the long term, which even so at first they tried to nationalize players from other countries, they quickly changed the way of thinking and it started to show its results. And you can't hate them for the academies, the professionals, the efforts to improve the game. And I wish a lot of countries would do that because if Qatar can build a competitive team for their continent, not the World Cup, but at least their continent as a first step, a lot of countries should be able to do it as well. So I think Qatar showed us the way to improve small countries on the international scene.
I still think Uzbekistan is the best country in Asia that has not made a World Cup.
And that is true as well. But with the expansion, hopefully they will make it to 2026.
All
Indeed.
right.
FB, would you mind explaining
All
the final four to
Sam.
us?
So Jordan, I think they were in the final four for the first time ever. So it was like I think a lot of people saw this final was going to be South Korea against Iran. But instead, we got two upsets. Jordan made it through, and they made their first ever Asian Cup final, and basically it was a whole shock for the world. And Qatar, Iran, they weren't playing they just fell off for that game and got ahead and won 3-2.
Yeah, I just don't think Iran. I think Iran was too focused on Japan, and they just kind of ran out of steam after playing a heavy hitter like Japan.
Ryubix?
Have nothing much to say about it, except that I'm expected South Korea to qualify. But to be fair, when I watched the game, Jordan were clearly better, so I don't have much to say.
Indeed. So the final was Jordan against Qatar. A final I don't think anyone in the whole world expected, except if you're somehow Qatari Jordan and you're a bit heavily biased. But at the end, Qatar won 3-1, and Akram Afif scored a hat trick of penalties.
Oh, I remember that game. There was a lot of drama about that, but to be fair, maybe outside of the second one, if I recall correctly, all penalties are legit.
Was
Jordan defense was
Yeah, I
very
think
weak.
well, I think they were mostly penalties, so it wasn't much of it wasn't it was an argument, but it wasn't like a worthwhile argument.
I would slightly argue with you about Qatar being not one of the main finalists because didn't they win it the last time they had this competition too?
I mean, like Qatar, we saw Qatar at the World Cup, so there was a lot of people that were doubtful on them because they might think that Qatar fell off or something like that. So it's still a good shock to see them in the final again.
Right, but then they win the 2019 version as well.
I mean, both were shocks because we it wasn't expected that they would replicate winning it again, because normally if you win it twice in a row, it would seem like you're a very good side, but Qatar, they weren't, I mean, seen as to win it twice in a row.
That's right. They just happened to be good when they needed to be.
Yeah.
And they got to play teams that just ran out of steam.
I mean, when you think about it,
Indeed.
both Ivory Coast and Qatar, as host, won their respective continental cups, and it created a lot of, drama, because on one end there was sorts of corruption for Ivory Coast, and the same for Qatar, because host countries and everything. So I think it's also because it always seems weird for other countries when the host wins in their home, because you always feels like they won because of home advantage and not because they are good, if you know what I mean. Maybe that's part of the drama for me.
Well, that's the whole point of being a host too. Like if you think about what happened in 2010 South Africa, South Africa wasn't even supposed to get out of the group stage, but just for whatever reason, being a host, you get that extra push.
I mean, you also want to mention Russia in 2018, maybe?
That too. Well, and even more so because they beat Spain in penalties in the knockouts, the first round.
Yeah, that was very a big match. But we are not here to talk about that, so congratulations anyway for Qatar for winning the second Asian Cup in a row, which is also their second title ever in history. So maybe Qatar will start to improve even more from them, but only time will tell as we move to Euro
I just want to say
2024.
congrats to Jordan for making their first final as well.
Oh, you're right as well. Jordan was making the first international final, and it should be mentioned as well. It's always nice to see new countries reaching the final step of any international tournament. So we are moving to Euro with the three paths of technically the Nations League that gave the last three tickets to Germany. So let's start with Path A, which involved Poland, Estonia, Wales, and Finland. In the semi-finals, Poland smashed Estonia 5-1. There is nothing much to say about the game because Poland is still with their golden generation, even though it's starting to decline, it's still their golden generation, while Estonia is a team that barely struggles, even in League C, so with not a lot of experience and professional players. So it was basically a one-way matchup. Still good job for them to scoring one goal away. And kind of the same happened for Wales versus Finland, where the British was able to dominate as well and win the game 4-1. So it looks like the very good Finland we have seen qualify for the last Euro during COVID isn't there anymore.
I mean, I was a bit surprised of the result of Wales beating Finland 4. I thought it would be like I thought this would be the close game of semi-finals, but instead it was just Wales who ran away with it.
Yeah,
I don't have anything to add.
yeah, both semi-finals was one-way matches, and then you got the final also in Wales, where even so it was the Polish that were able to go through in a goalless game, 5-4 on penalties. I haven't watched it personally, so I can't really tell the quality of both teams. The only thing I know for sure is that Poland is now in the group of France, Austria, and Netherlands, and it will be a tough group, even for them. Do you have
So
anything
I
to add?
mean, I think that Poland, Wales. It was. I watched the last 20 minutes or so, but I didn't watch the penalty. But I watched the last 20 minutes of normal time. I mean, I thought for me Poland was the better side of the day. So uh, it was a bit cruel as they went out despite being the better side for the last few minutes of the match.
They didn't. They won in penalties.
Yeah. I thought it would be cruel if they ended up losing.
Oh, that's gotcha.
Oh, so for you, Wales would have been like a minor in the tournament instead of Poland? Well,
Yeah, I've been like at Poland. They were playing away, and it's a bit unfair for the UEFA playoff system to have the away games.
I do agree that it's very, very unfair in some aspects because it's only one-off games, and the team that is assured to be away both games, they are totally screwed. So yeah, but that's how UEFA was able to manage to make the UNL count. There, I do agree that I do like the UNL, but the way it changed the playoffs and qualifiers, I do not like it much, to be fair. What about you, Sam? Do you have an opinion on that subject?
Not really, no.
Okay, so in that case, I will move to Path B, which was very political, I will say, because when the draw was announced, there was a lot of comments on social media saying why Path B only have three teams. But yes, you have Israel, you have Ukraine, so yes, that was a very political group to start with. Let's start with Israel versus Iceland, which I think happened in Hungary, if I recall correctly, where Israel was able to open the score and dominate, but Iceland was able to make it back and not only equalize, but to totally dominate the game by winning 4-1 on neutral ground, which is quite a performance to note.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the result, and it was actually 1-2 until the 80th minute. Israel had a penalty. They could have made it 2-2, but they missed. And straight away after, Iceland scored two more goals, and Iceland won 4-1. And basically, there was a lot of people celebrating at the end.
Yes, that was quite an humiliation for Israel on that game. But I remember that game correctly. That penalty miss was what killed Israel's chances of getting to the Euros because Iceland took your opportunity and did not miss it. Maybe it is a lesson that will help the Israelis to improve for the next qualifying campaign or the Nations League that will come next season. Do you have anything to add, Sam, or should I go to the second semifinal?
Just go to the second semifinal.
Okay. So Bosnia and Herzegovina trying to reach their first Euro ever because I sure recall that since independence from Yugoslavia, they only made the 2014 World Cup, but nothing else. And despite some hopes sampling at home, Ukraine was able to just lead the game 2-1 and just advance to the final that they will host. I mean, host, but not really because it will be on neutral ground in Germany anyway. But that was still a logic domination on Ukraine, having a more deeper squad than Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is barely professional. So I'll say that maybe outside of Iceland dominating Israel, there was no upset in that path.
Indeed, Ukraine against Bosnia. Actually, Bosnia were winning 1-0, and then Ukraine scored two goals after the 85 minute to win 2-1.
Oh yes, you're right. That was two late wins in that path. That was quite a crazy end. Yes, you're right. Yeah, I remember the Bosnian fans were losing their shit when it happened. And I mean, I can understand why. You're leading, you are close to qualify for the first time ever, and no, everything falls apart in the last few minutes. You will lose your sanity. And then you got the final on neutral ground between Ukraine and Iceland, and despite the fight, I like Iceland. Let's be honest, I always picked Ukraine, and Ukraine did. There, I don't see anything else I can do uh, except that Ukraine was the favorites of the group anyway.
Yeah, Ukraine actually were 1-0 down in both games, and they ended up winning 2-1 twice in a row. So it was just a repeat game for them.
Yeah, Ukraine have that mentality that a lot of countries do not have, so that might come in handy for when the Euro comes in, especially when now that they are used to play in Germany, either in clubs in European competitions or with the national team, so they might feel on home soil in Euro. We should not underestimate that.
Indeed.
Okay, so I think I can move to Pep C. The first semi-final opposed Georgia versus Luxembourg, which are two countries that never made any international tournament before outside of the Nations League. Georgia was trying to get advantage on playing at home, and they did. Wait, no. No, yes, they never qualified. No, last time I think they lost in the final to North Macedonia. Yes, that was a trauma for the country. And despite being not the favorites, Georgia was able to win 2-0 against a very impressive Luxembourg, which, as you recall, and third in their group in the main qualifying stage. So, despite both countries never making it, technically in my book, Georgia winning was an upset. And then on the other side, you have Greece that haven't made an Euro since I think it was 2012 against Kazakhstan,
Yeah,
which
it was
was,
2012.
yes, thank you, which was paired against Kazakhstan, the third and last country in the path that never made an international tournament. And Greece got a one-way to the final with a walkover, a 5-0 scoreline. You can say anything. Expect Kazakhstan really was underperforming because you expected them to at least give some decent competitivity to Greece, even if they lose. And they didn't. In the end, Georgia was also able at home to do another upset and knock out Greece on penalties, so it's still a short win, but an historical one as Georgia becomes your sole but newcomers in the next Euro. So we will have a very brand new team to watch out for the Euro. I'll
Yeah,
say I'm very happy for it.
yeah, I was watching the Georgia against Greece match. It was a very close game and went to penalties. I would say like whoever won on penalties was the fair winner of the match, and Georgia at the end came up with it, and they will join Portugal, Turkey, and Czech. So unfortunately, we did not get Greece against Turkey in the Euros.
Oh my god, that would have been a big derby. That would have been sick. So yeah, so the last three qualified teams are Poland, Ukraine, and Georgia. Do you have anything to say, Sam?
No, not really.
Yeah, so just allow me to check all the groups now that we know all of them. So yes, so as I said, Poland ends in with Netherlands, Austria, and France in Group D, while Ukraine ends with Belgium, Slovakia, and Romania in Group E, and Georgia, as FB said, ends with Turkey, Portugal, and Czech Republic. We will not talk about their odds now. We'll talk about it in the next episode because um, wait a minute, we might have something else to mention.
Um, there was the Nations League relegation playout.
Yes, I nearly forgot about it. Do you want to explain it, Sam?
So basically, the best team in Group D in,
No, you're wrong.
of League D, excuse me.
You're
Was
wrong
it the
again.
best team?
No, maybe you missed the information. They changed the
Yeah.
format last minute.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead and tell me because I didn't realize there was a change.
Basically, at first, there was all the teams that ranked fourth in League C that will have to be paired into two matchups to saved themselves from relegation, but they changed last minute. They kept Cyprus and Belarus due to Russia being excluded entirely from the Nations League, so Russia will be not counted at all in the next edition of the Nations League. So they saved Cyprus and Belarus in League C, and they made Lithuania and Gibraltar into a new playoff, a single one, where the winner would become the last team in League C, while the loser will become the last team in League D. And in both legs, Lithuania won only 1-0, but even so it's not much, it's enough for saving themselves in League C and sending Gibraltar back to the lowest division possible. I don't think we have much to say except that Gibraltar played way better than during the qualifiers, to be fair.
We'll just have to try it again next season.
Well, they will be in a group. They will be in a decent group, I think, because if you look, I think
Are they in the group with San Marino and Liechtenstein?
Yes, Gibraltar. Yeah, normally Gibraltar should win all 4 games, or at least 3 of them. Because despite being one of the weakest sides in Europe, San Marino and Liechtenstein are supposedly worse than Gibraltar. So normally the team is able to promote back to League C in the next edition.
Or have a chance to.
Well, it looks like we are finally reaching our last subject, which is the CONCACAF Nations League playoff. Sam, if you please.
Yeah. So the quarterfinals are pretty straightforward. 2 legs, at least for the first. It's 2 legs for the quarterfinals, and it's just a single leg for the semifinals and the final and third place games. There wasn't really much to talk about, other than Mexico had to win via penalties over Honduras.
I'm confused right now.
Well, I guess Panama beating Costa Rica 6-1 is also a bit of an upset, because you would expect that to be one of the closest games.
I think a lot of people did expect that game to be the closest. And it ended to be the worst one.
Yeah, I think the Costa Rica Panama game was supposed to be the closest series of the 4, and then I think Costa Rica was supposed to have was the favorite to win.
But that game also highlights the downfall of Costa Rica, that country that was very decent few years back really fell in grace so fast. It's very sad for them. Same can be said for Honduras, even so they seem to come back little by little.
Right, but with Costa Rica, it's just that they have this basically the same team as when they shocked the world in the World Cup, when they had Uruguay and Italy and England in their group and they made it through. Yeah, it was mostly the same team, so they're just all really old now. They don't have much new faces right now.
Oh yeah, I heard that the youth are not really used in Costa Rica, which when all the old guys will leave, it will create such an empty moment in the national team. Yeah, Costa Rica are not ready to come back on the big stage soon.
One shock I found though is Canada losing. Canada lost to Jamaica. They won at when Jamaica were playing at home, but when they played at home, they lost 3-2.
I think that was the only upset in that stage.
No, Panama beating Costa Rica was an upset.
I mean, for me, they will advance anyway, but yes, the upset was more on the scoreline, if you ask me.
As far as the Jamaica-Canada game or series, that wasn't much of an upset for me. Like, Jamaica's a good enough squad where they can make the World Cup, and I'm pretty sure we'll see them in the 2026 version. But Canada's definitely up and running, and they've really shown that they can compete with the big boys in CONCACAF. But that was more of a really, if you think about it, Canada's only been showing up since what, like a year or two before the World Cup even started. The 2022 World Cup started.
I can't help on that one.
Like, I think they
I
won
also
the
thought
World Cup in 2000, but that was their only win.
I see. I also found a bit shocking was that Trinidad beat USA again in the one match.
Oh yes, reminds me on 2017.
That doesn't shock me at all. The United States is not as good as people think they are.
Well, we can see that. But to be
Hmm?
fair, the Nations League and the Gold Cup are not taken entirely seriously, so you don't have your A team.
The Gold Cup is taken seriously every other year.
The Gold Cup taken seriously? Why don't you never send your A teams then?
We do.
No,
We
no,
do
that's
and we don't. It depends on what Gold Cup year it is. It just depends on if because the Gold Cup happens every 2 years.
Yeah, I know about that part.
So for the rendition that happens during World Cup qualifiers, we don't send our A teams because we're focused on the qualifiers. For the rendition that is just by itself, there's nothing else going on, we'll send our A team.
I see.
So it just depends on what year it is, whether it's a World Cup qualifying year or if it's a there's nothing going on type of year.
But I think that's a talk for another time because we have to continue talking about the Nations League.
So then we had the semifinals,
Okay, so
and like I said, single leg. And everything's played in the United States because that's where all the money is. Some games could be played in Mexico, but they choose to do it in the United States.
yeah, because no matter when you host it in USA, you always the diaspora coming to the games, so you have always the money in.
Yep.
So,
And there wasn't any jokes.
so yeah, okay. So tell me about the Final Four in Arlington.
Mexico. I didn't really watch any games, to be honest with you. I've been so busy with stuff outside of football. But Mexico being Panama 3-0, that's normal. You'd expect that, even though Mexico isn't the greatest side either compared to what they have been before. That seems to be a running theme in CONCACAF right now. But yeah, just based on the results, they didn't have any difficult time with Panama at all. The result between the U.S. and Jamaica, it was a bit shocking that it took extra time for the U.S. to win, but they ended up scoring 2 goals. Well, yeah. The fact that the tying goal was in the 96th minute of time, so like 6 minutes of stoppage time, and it was an own goal as well. So Jamaica scored against themselves to tie it to go to extra time and to lose.
That must have been such a national trauma for Jamaica because you will think that they will be able to reach a Nations League final and knock out USA, which is currently the biggest team in CONCACAF, and you just threw it away that way. It's nah, you can't. You just can't.
I don't think that. I think they were just pleased that they were even able to stay with the United States. It just shows that they still have a decent enough squad.
I mean,
But it's
Jamaica is getting a decent squad because they have more and more of their diaspora going to the big leagues, especially England.
right.
So
And if you think
they
about
are
most of the
getting
squad in the
that.
US, and most of the US squad is from MLS players that don't play in the big leagues in Europe. There are some, like Pulisic, but most of the players are from the MLS.
I can figure. So yeah. So you told me USA going to the final against Jamaica, and at the end they won 2-0 against Mexico. So
Mm-hmm.
it says that their third title in 3 editions.
No, it just shows the downfall of Mexico, even though the United States is also not doing great either.
Yeah.
We have a bit of a coaching problem where we don't necessarily like our coach, but we don't have any good replacements for said coach. And Mexico is
Yeah,
there's stuff going on in Mexico that's not great.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they're not doing so hot.
Yeah, the federation being quite stupid, and the fans doesn't help, because I remember during the game, CONCACAF have made calls for Mexican fans to stop homophobic chants, if I recall.
Oh yeah.
And I think the last time Mexico beat USA in a competitive game was in 2019, just to showcase how long it's been since Mexico was able to beat their main rivals.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild, man. CONCACAF
Yeah.
are clearly in a weird era.
Mexico is having a league issue right now, like with their league teams. I mean, but the National League is what I'm trying to say. The Liga MX, and that's not helping with the Mexico squad at all, and how bad they're doing.
Yeah, and it's very very bad that it happens now, considering that in 2 years, in a bit more than 2 years, Mexico, USA, and Canada will host the World Cup. Canada, despite seeing improvements, are stuck with many problems inside of their federation and many debates. USA are improving, but that's problems with their coach, and Mexico is just a problem by itself. Like, I'm
Yep.
very pessimistic as we speak about the host for the next World Cup.
And the thing with Mexico too is it's a self-inflicting issue that they need to fix themselves, but I don't know if they even can anymore. I think it's gotten too bad to the point where they may not even be able to fix it.
Well, it looks like it's the time to start from scratch and hope they will get enough steps done by the time the World Cup arrives on home soil, because it will be such a shame if Mexico or USA gets out of the group stage on their home country.
Well, remember Mexico made it to the knockouts in what 7 World Cups in a row, and then they didn't make it out of the group stage this last World Cup.
You're right. Yeah, that's a shocking story. I think they call that the Cinco Partido curse in Mexico, because not being able to play that fifth game. But maybe it's a bad for a good, as we say in my country. Maybe that Mexico will start so great that it may be able to finally reach that fifth game. Like a trade for a trade. But
Maybe.
only time will tell. But at the end of the day, congratulations to United States for winning their third title in the Nations League. They deserve it. They are clearly the better side in CONCACAF, and they deserve to have another trophy in their cabinet.
And remember, the U.S. is the only winner of the Nations League so far.
Yeah, and they already have a hat-trick of titles.
Yep. You don't want to forget Jamaica getting 3rd place.
And
They won 1-0 to Panama. I didn't see the game, so I don't know how good it was, but congrats to Jamaica getting 3rd place.
Yeah, they deserve as well. Like Canada, they are really improving, and I can't wait to see how they will perform in the upcoming years. The Nations League was also works as qualifiers for the upcoming Copa America, which is also hosted in the United States in a few months next summer.
Mm-hmm.
Both games were hosted on neutral ground and opposed the quarterfinalists of the Nations League. The first one with being Canada versus Trinidad and Tobago, which is not a surprise as Canada won 2-0, and just even so they struggled a bit on that game against Trinidad, they still managed to get the job done and advance to the Copa America for the first time in their history, and we should applaud them for being newcomers in one of the biggest continental competitions on earth. It will be a great experience for the team ahead of the World Cup. Do you have anything to add for that game?
Yeah, I can.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Canada. They did the job, and two second half goals, and they made it over Trinidad.
Do you have anything else to say?
I don't have anything else to say about that now.
No.
Okay, then let's move for the last game of this episode, with Costa Rica facing off Honduras. How can I say that? The two fallen big teams on Central America faced off to reach another continental event. And in both cases, it would have been a big opportunity to bounce back, and for the loser, another time in the shadows. And despite Honduras opening the score, it looks like Costa Rica will be the one to have a chance to shine on the continental stage once again, as they won 3-1. Let's hope that their golden generation will be able to do one last dance before going into retirement.
This game just kind of shows the discrepancy between the top teams of at least internationally, top teams in North America compared to the middle teams, which I would say would be Honduras and El Salvador, along with Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, that is one issue with CONCACAF, is that the difference, the gap is too big, and despite CONCACAF efforts to strengthen everyone, it seems to fail or backfire to some extent. It seems like that continent is cursed, or maybe it's clearly not the way to go. Maybe we should change everything.
The difference between CONCACAF versus most of the other confederations around the world is that soccer isn't the main sport in most of them.
That's actually false. Only USA and Canada are outsiders. Maybe a few islands with the cricket, but most of the
With cricket
members.
and baseball.
Yeah, you're right, baseball, my bad. But I think most of the members of CONCACAF are soccer or football are their primary sport. So I think that's not the issue. Even so, it could explain why USA and Canada are late. But I think that's
Well,
not the issue, or the only one at least.
right. The big thing about the islands, like the British Islands and the French Islands that play, they're just really small in population, so you're not going to expect them to be really good anyway.
You got a point there, especially when you oppose them to big countries like Mexico and USA. Like they can hardly be competitive, and the two giants have hardly any competitions to
Right.
improve themselves.
Right. You're talking about with nations that have a population of like in the thousands or tens of thousands or hundred thousands versus the countries with a population of over 100 million.
Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to make it work, but not. I mean, sometimes people trash talk CONCACAF about how the confederation is not competitive. But to be fair, there are a lot of factors against them. But on one end, I also think that CONCACAF clearly doesn't take the good decisions to make the situation better for anyone.
No, I did not like the decision they made on how the Nations League itself was run. I am very opposed to it. I don't like the fact that there were teams that automatically made it to the quarterfinals. That seems nonsense to me. Why would you have someone automatically qualify for something that you need to qualify for, unless you were the host?
Yeah, I do agree with you, and also the Champions Cup. Like the expansion idea was good, but the way it worked out is counterproductive, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about the CONCACAF Nations League as well, was they changed the format. And so not only did you have 4 teams automatically qualify based on rankings, but you also had only 2 groups of 6 teams each in League A, and then you only played 4 teams in those groups. and they were single. There was one home, or you played 2 home and 2 away between 4 teams of the 5 that you should have played. Yeah.
I think that will be all for today. It's already been a long time, and basically we covered everything we wanted to cover for today. Except if one of you two have anything anything more to say before we cut off.
Thanks for having me on.
No, don't worry, it was a pleasure. We hope to see you soon as well. Then I think that's all. Thank you everyone for watching us until the end. I hope you enjoy the podcast as always. If you have any comment, don't hesitate to put it in the comment section. We'll also
Comments,
give a link.
questions, we read them all. Don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah, it will help a lot the channel. Thank you. And as always, we'll give a link to Sam's server if you want to talk about international football on a yearly basis with us. Because as always, we are very active and talks about any continental competition we can think of at any time. That was Ryubix, Sam, and FB7. Thank you once again. Have a good weekend and see you next time. Peace.